Welcome back, everyone, to the Counterculture Podcast, where we are countering culture with biblical truth. My name is Derek Mount, and I have my great friend Anthony Reminder with me today. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing good. Just sad that we're not in person anymore, and we have to do this over
Yeah,
the computer. It's a lot less fun.
yeah, I know. I've cried in the bathroom for the past 2 weeks.
I bet.
Long distance, guys. The hardest thing ever. Like, oh man, I don't know if we'll make it.
We didn't last time. we broke up
Hey,
last time.
hey, we broke up last time, but like any other good relationship, we're on and off.
Yeah.
The best ones are on and off.
No, we're on for good this time.
Yeah, we are mightily committed.
This is episode 13, right? I mean,
Yeah, no, it's 12.
oh yeah, 12. My bad, dude. I don't
Come
know
on,
what
man.
episodes we're on. I really don't have a good track at all. I could have sworn that the first episode we came back with was episode 11. I think I said, but I think.
I mean the one we had on YouTube today. I guess this is Friday we're filming, but it was episode 10. It said episode 10. So either
And you
you're
posted
wrong,
no.
I'm wrong, or
It was
well,
10. You put on
okay.
Instagram episode 11. I was dying when I saw that.
Dude, I'm pretty sure I texted you. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, because I
Forget
was saying
that.
episode 11.
We can just hop into our topic today. We should have a good one. And it's basically, everyone likes to chime in politics today, and it seems like the big thing, and it's just the next wave that everyone's hopping on. It's like, what's some big waves you would say, people? Like selfie sticks, what other things?
It's a trend.
Products,
Politics, it's a
It-
new trend.
it's a trend, and I bet you in the next 3 years people are getting bored of it, and we're not going to care about it anymore. But we're just here to talk about it, just in case if that's not true. So today we're going to be talking about politics in America. We've kind of divvied, I guess, a little bit of it and talked a little bit in past episodes, but I think we wanted to take an episode where we could probably talk about the whole time, because I think it's a thing that many people are passionate about today. Christians are very passionate about it, maybe a little bit too passionate, but that's what we're here to find out. So, Anthony, I kind of want to ask you a question. You think, I know there's various views on this. You think America is founded like a Christian nation, like was founded as a Christian nation, or
I think so.
would you say no? Because I know there's some views.
I think it was. I mean, you think about the people that came here. Like, what was their main reason to come here was to flee religious persecution, right? And they wanted a place where they could worship God as they saw fit. One of the first celebrations of the arrival in the New World from colonists or from pilgrims was a religious celebration, right? And you look at all of the founding fathers and all of the things they wrote about and talked about. They were very religious people, and they had some varying religious views, and they had some kind of Christian adjacent views in some cases, like Thomas Jefferson, who I think famously wrote his own Bible, kind of editing out the parts that he was not happy with. And but they were all religious people that who were fundamentally coming from a Christian place, or at least from a theistic place, and that's where they were getting their ideas, especially in regard to rights, right? And in that's why it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator. That's the most foundational document to the country, cites our creator as the source of all of what they're getting ready to talk about, which is our rights, and then the government's role in preserving those rights and protecting those rights to the effect of a flourishing country and a flourishing society. And it's all based on the idea of a creator that's given us that. So I think absolutely a broadly theistic framework is fundamental to the country, and specifically a Christian one.
See, I disagree with that. I think from the point of view I'm coming from is most of the founding fathers weren't Christian; they were deist. Now I'm not saying there weren't some Christian principles, like everyone's created in the image of God, or is that? I'm not good with. Is that the Constitution? That's not the Constitution.
What, the one that I said?
Yeah. Is that the Constitution?
The Declaration of Independence, I think.
Yeah.
Now you got me questioning it. I think it's Declaration of Independence.
My senior history class didn't help out on that one. I forget. But no, I disagree with because of the way I kind of view it as this. Like, if it was a Christian nation, then in a sense, it would be Christian, where everything would be founded on the principles of Christianity, which in some cases I don't think it was. I really don't know. Like I said, I think there's some principles that they took from Christianity that they implemented into the U.S. Constitution. But again, I just don't think foundationally those people, the founding fathers who were deists, they believed in a God, but they didn't know which God, were coming from a lens of Christianity, if you get my gist. And I think if it was based on a Christian nation, I think it would be more or less like a what's the one Roman empire after Constantine? That empire? Would you say that would be substantially a Christian nation? Or would you do you know which nation I'm talking about? The one after Rome, it fell, and then that one.
The empire after Rome?
Yes.
Because Constantine was a Roman emperor.
Uh-huh. But he tried to make Rome, correct, a Christian nation.
He did, because previous to that, I think this is in the 4th century, Christianity was illegal, and the Christians were being persecuted, and this is where we get all of the major, like, early church persecution and the, putting them in the arenas with the wild animals and stuff. And then Constantine converts to Christianity and then legalizes Christianity and makes it the religion of Rome. And then this is where we get all of the, from that point on, we start getting the ecumenical councils and stuff. Like the Council of Nicaea was that first one under Constantine, where he wanted to define what Christianity was for the nation, for the empire. But even then, that wasn't, would you say that the Roman Empire under Constantine, it's never going to be a perfect representation of Christianity embodied in a government, right? So just because you're saying that the early American government, the early American nation doesn't reflect Christian values enough to be considered a Christian nation because they didn't reflect Christian values correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that in what way were they not basing what they were doing on Christian values? In what way did they kind of say, we're going to reject Christian values in favor of something else to make it not a Christian nation?
What makes Christian music Christian music?
Christian music?
What makes Christian music Christian music? Like, what makes music, what makes it, quote unquote, the genre of Christian?
It would be the content of it, like the lyrics, the messages, the doctrines that it's teaching, right?
Yes. Was that the foundation of the founding fathers? Were they coming at, well, this is the gospel of Christ. This is what our nation's going to be built on. The church and the state will be the same, will come together. But I think they've kept it separate. If I'm not mistaken, they kept it separate for the reason of, I think, because of Great Britain. That's the main reason why they left Great Britain, because of the way the church and the state was together, and it was causing all these various problems. And they're like, well, I don't want to be a part of that because it's suppressing my freedom of religion, and all these other freedoms that I should have, and I want to break away from that and make my own nation, which isn't, quote unquote, dependent upon that, where the church and the state are together, but they're separate. I kind of look at a Christian nation as where the church and your governmental, it's all one and the same. And you have that governance where it's every single, Christian idea, every single ethic of Christianity is engraved into the society, the laws, the just everything. That's what I kind of view as a Christian nation, because that's where the content would come in, like music. What makes Christian music or what makes music Christian is the content of it. And if it's not that content, if you just have maybe one or two things sprinkled in, but the rest are more quote unquote, what would I call it? More, I'd say, okay, this disagreement with Christianity or doesn't really align with the views, or doesn't really foundationally match up with Christianity, then I don't think it's a Christian nation, if that makes sense. Now, I could be, you're a better critical thinker than me, so you could probably shoot some fire at me right now, because that's how I'm viewing it. I could be wrong. But
yeah, this is interesting. I mean, because me and Derek have actually never talked about this before. Like, we didn't even really talk about this before filming. He just said he wanted to bring up politics, and I was like, all right. So the idea that the founding fathers were, so I would push back on the idea that the founding fathers were deists. They actually weren't across the board deists. There was, like I said, there was some Christianity adjacent beliefs. Like, most of them would be, they believed in a benevolent personal God from which we get rights and things like that, right? But they weren't across the board theists. Like George Washington, John Adams. And speaking to what you said about the separation of church and state, which really isn't something that was ever, I think that's a myth that you've probably heard about the separation of church and state. The separation of church and state was never something that was stated anywhere in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. It was not a founding governmental principle of America. People in modern times who want to separate Christianity from government and want to separate our religious views from the public square have promulgated that myth. There is like one slight reference to it in like a personal letter of Thomas Jefferson's, but it was never referenced in any of the actual founding documents. And you even look at people like George Washington and John Adams being the father of the Constitution. They were very clear and insistent that the nation actually had to be religious, that religion was essential to Christianity. John Adams is the one who said that our Constitution, it only works when the people of the country are religious. He said the Constitution is for a moral and religious people, and it's unfit to govern any other. And so
I agree with that.
And also, speaking to what you said about the separation of church and state, one of the main reasons that they didn't establish a church at the federal level, like an official state church, state being, the federal state, was because in early America, the states themselves, like as in the 13 colonies, which became the 13 states, they had state churches already on the state level. They had state churches, and so they didn't establish one in the federal government over all of them. So it's actually, this whole idea of separation between church and state at the start of America it's not what it's been made out to be. And the founders were very in support of religion playing a major role in politics, because they themselves were very religious.
Yeah. When I looked it up, not here to misquote you, but it says Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, Madison, and Monroe practiced a faith called deism.
Yeah, and I've seen that too, but I've also seen stuff that says they didn't, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of, that's what I'm calling what they believed kind of Christian adjacent, because it wasn't explicitly Christian for all of them, but it's not necessarily explicitly deism either. there's kind of
Yeah, I think
mixed
that,
historical
yeah.
records on what they actually believed, because they I mean, they definitely said things that can go either way.
I think that's an interesting point you brought up about with morals and how a nation thrives if it's more religious and how it thrives. And I know I've read some articles, and one article was about, I think it was marriage. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about the more religious views on marriage. Like usually those nations are the ones that usually last the longest. But when like we see a sexual revolution comes in through, the 70s where it's like, I don't even know the sexual revolution. It's all I gotta say. It's progressively gotten worse. We're up to the point now where, you know, um, we are very immoral in marriage. Well, sex outside
Mm-hmm.
of marriage, but you also have uh, gay marriage. If we really want to, if we call that a marriage by the state, by the government, they call it a marriage, but we both probably say it's not a marriage under the confines of God. What He says a biblical marriage is. But it was just showing how like the more fi- fi- I can't speak. Let's just say
Mm-hmm.
more religious you are, the more your society thrives, which I find super interesting to a point, because of the way the more religious you are, the less hindrance there is to, um, the less likely you're to commit sin. Now, I'm not saying sin in the heart, because some people, like we were saying in I think 2 episodes ago, I think that would be episode 10, where you could be the most morally upright person with your heart totally far away from God. But the more you uphold those moral principles and uphold those moral things that are that God has, that's more closer to the truth that God has laid out for us to follow, the more the nation thrives, which I find very interesting, in how it goes away from this picture of how sin, the farther we get away from God, it brings more sin, and how that sin corrodes. So like our nation, I would say it's deteriorating amongst itself because of the way we look at the fundamental thing with sex and all that. How you know people look at marriage as something that's not very. It's like I can leave the relationship, which has its effects with divorce and their kids. But then you have same-sex marriages, which what does that cause? Less kids to have, like less kids. You'll have less kids, and if you have less, and then we'll throw an abortion in there too, where that creates less kids. And if you have less kids, then the future of your nation is basically, it's like the problem China's running into, where they cut off that line where they couldn't have enough kids. So now they're having population problems. Where like we don't
Mm-hmm.
have enough people to gov or to headphones just died, to govern these people, or not to govern these people, to my mind's blanking right now. Long week of school. To fill in these jobs. So we don't have
Uh-huh.
enough people to fill in these jobs, and now since there's not enough people to fill in these jobs, and we're running into all these other problems, our nation's going to collapse because there's not enough people to run it. And that's where America is kind of running into, of some things studies have shown, where there's just less and less kids happening because of these effects of sin that are entering into our country.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at a Muslim country, take marriage for example again, they're having more kids, and guess what? Their nation is set up for the future, and they're more or less, I'm not saying their views correct on who God is, but they're more or less bringing more life. They're living where God tells us to procreate, and multiply the world, and they're doing that. And guess what? Their nations are set for the future, while our nation here is just deteriorating because of us not going further away from the truth, the truth that God has set, or that standard, or what he says is right and true. Which I found interesting that you pointed out. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah. So I would say that, so putting aside what religion the founding fathers were, because actually, if we're agreeing that they supported a moral and religious nation, even on the governmental level, then it doesn't actually matter specifically what religion each of them held to.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I think that there's there's a historical lack of clarity, and I think that a lot of people who are anti-Christian have exaggerated the unchristian beliefs of the founding fathers, but I also think that certain Christians have exaggerated the Christian belief of the founding fathers. I don't think it's as clear cut either way as people on either side would want to believe. But putting that aside, like I said, if we're agreeing then that the government in the country has to be moral and religious, then the question is what morality and what religion? Because if the government has to be moral and religious, what I think it has to be, I think every government has to be moral and it has to be religious. There's a lie that people will say that, like, you can't legislate morality, which isn't true because every law legislates morality, every single one. And so a government, if we're agreeing that a government, specifically our government, has to be moral and religious, the question is what morality and what religion? And as a Christian, I want it to be Christian morality and Christian religion. If the government has to be a certain religion, if a government has to exemplify the values of a certain ethical system, then I want it to be mine. I want it to be the Christian one, right? So that would mean, I guess that would mean that I'm a Christian nationalist then, if that's what we're talking about. If that's what Christian nationalism means to you, the embodiment of Christian values in government, then that would make me a Christian nationalist. Because if a government has to pick a certain value set, I want it to be the Christian value set. So if you're a Christian, what do you want the government to choose a different value set that isn't the Christian one?
I would not, but at the same time, and we were kind of talking about this before the podcast, before we started the film, is it's this two-way street with morality, and I think with Christian nationalism, this is where I struggle with, is where you're gonna force down Christ upon people, and if we're being honest here, that doesn't really work out. We can go back. I remember a story with the conquistadors. I forget which one it was, but it was this Native American who was like, and don't get me wrong, half the stuff they were doing were out of pocket, like definitely not Christ-like. Like some of those
Out of pocket for sure.
But it's like they were trying to say before they said you have a choice, okay? You can either accept Christ as personal Lord or Savior, or I can kill you right here. And the Indian said, if I'm not, he was like, if that is the God you serve, basis on his actions, then I rather die. And this is where the contrary view I come from is like, well, we force all these people to hold up the Christian worldview, okay, all the morals and everything, and I think there's fundamentally some things that they should uphold, like abortion. But if we're looking at, take for example, sexual immorality, like we're talking about, same-sex couples or same-sex people who, homosexual or lesbians or gays, like they're the same thing. That type of sexual orientation, if we ban that, that's gonna be that. My point of view, that will make people less likely to believe in the gospel than if we said, you know what, here's what we're gonna do. You can live the way you want to live, okay, morally, you want to do whatever you want, but that's where we take a foothold and show them who Christ is through our actions, and through the preaching of the gospel, through our actions, and say, hey, like, I see your lifestyle. I disagree with it wholeheartedly, but I'm still gonna love you through with it. And if you wanna go and do that, by all means do that. But
Mm-hmm.
I won't agree with it, but by all means do that. But I'm still gonna serve you. I'm still gonna love you. If you need something to be met, I will meet that need. If you need rent to be paid, for example, for 1 month, I will pay that rent. We show them who Christ is. We act like Christ to them, and that's a greater way of getting a hold, or planting a seed that God can get a hold of their hearts. Where God, like we're saying, can the only one who can transform someone's heart. You know, we can't force someone who has same sex attraction, you know, that tendency, that temptation to go in. We can't change that for them. We can put all the laws in the world on that and make it illegal, have them go to prison for it, but that doesn't mean their hearts change. And that's where I'm like, I don't know if we should do it. I don't know if the Christian nationalist groups that are rising up to bring a political party that kind of bans all these things is like, I'm sitting back like, I'm wrestling with it. It was like, oh, well, will people be more likely to come to Christ through it? But I mean, I could be totally wrong. That's just how my viewpoint is. Yes, I want to uphold Christian morals, but at the same time, like, I think if you try to force those morals on someone else, they're less likely to believe in the gospel that you believed in. Because I know if I was in their shoes, and if I believed something like they did and someone tried to say, well, that's illegal to do, I'm going to be like, hey, no, I'm not going to, I will feel a certain way, even though it's wrong. I'm not saying it's not wrong. Even though, like, the things they do are wrong. I'm not talking about the same sex, but other aspects like abortion and stuff, which I guess would be banned. I agree it should be banned. But, like, with other aspects, I don't know what else we would throw into there. But it's just that wrestling feeling, is the gospel less liable to impact lives through just making laws and regulations. It's kind of my rant for that. The wrestling, you can try to clear up my words or explain something better to me. So
Yeah, I think that your concern there is, to put it bluntly, really dramatic. You're hearing me say that Christian values should be represented in government, and you are saying, oh, so people should be put to death like the conquistadors
no.
did.
That's just an example. I'm just saying, like, if you
That's what you're saying, though. You're saying that Christian nationalism is like the conquistadors, where the logical extent of that is killing people who aren't Christians.
No. I just use that as an example, but I'm saying, like, if you try to say you can't do this to someone who already believes it's right, and we're gonna throw them in prison or jail or fine them a fee, I mean, I just don't see it's very hard to.
Yeah, but that's not what Christian nationalism is. Like, not even that Christian nationalism is it's not putting people to death for not being Christian. It's also not putting people in jail for not being Christian. It's also not fining them for not being Christian. Like, it's not punishing people for not being Christian. That's not at all what Christian nationalism is, from the way I understand it. And that's what I said before, is like, if Christian, I would be considered a Christian nationalist if Christian nationalism means Christian values and Christian morality being represented in government and in our laws. If that's simply what it means, then yeah, I'm a Christian nationalist. But so from that ideology, from the one that I'm saying that I support, which is that doesn't mean putting people in jail, or, I mean, especially not killing them. It doesn't even mean putting people in jail or fining them for not being Christian or not going to church or not professing Christ. I've never heard a single person who is in support of Christianity being represented in government and in laws support anything like that. It's not even saying putting people to death or even putting people in jail for being gay or having same-sex attractions or anything like that. It's not jailing people for that. That's like way down the rabbit hole. That's like a way slippery slope type thing. For us to say that this is, for us to say simply that this is a Christian nation and we prioritize Christian values and we have Christianity and our theism at the center of our values, and that's what's that's what our fundamental ideas in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence, that's where that springs from, is a fundamentally Christian. Even if all the founders weren't Christian themselves, it was still coming from a fundamentally Christian society, because Western civilization and the values that have come from that do come from a place of Christianity. It's saying that it all comes from that base, right? And then our values reflect Christianity. It's not enforcing Christianity by law. It's not forcing people to go to church, forcing people to profess Christ, forcing people to stop having same-sex attraction. It's not any of that. It's not forcing anyone to be Christian, but it is enforcing Christian morality to a certain extent, much more than we are now in government.
So would you say, so let's say that extent, so Christian morality, let's throw some ideas. So would sexual immorality be a law? Anything outside the confines of marriage would be a law that if you break that law, like they say, if you break a law in America, you're going to serve some time. Would that be something you would throw in, or would you leave that out? Because that's a ethic of Christianity. That's the morality of Christianity. It's wrong, and I agree it's wrong. But if we put that in, which I think Christian nationalism would do, because it is a law, in a sense, then everyone who gets caught and breaks that law, they're gonna serve time. It's not like they'll be left free or they'll pay a fine. It's not like, oh well, you know. Would you think that would be a law, or would you think that's?
Yeah. So well, there are two parts of it. There's my answer and there's my preface that my answer actually doesn't matter. My answer, what my answer is, doesn't matter to the fundamental, because what I'm telling you is that what's it called? Christian nationalism, as I understand it, and as I hear people talk about it all the time, because I listen and read people who are Christians who want their Christian beliefs enacted in government and in laws, and so they would be considered Christian nationalists. I listen and read what they say all the time, and I've never heard a single person explain that following every single tenet of Christianity, that like homosexuals are going to be jailed or killed or anything like that, or that people are going to be forced to be Christian. Never heard anyone even suggest that. And so the idea is not that every single tenet, if you don't follow every single tenet of Christianity, then you go to jail. It's not the idea, but it is about enforcing Christian morality and seeing more Christian morality represented in government and in law, more so than we are right now, much more so than we are right now. So it's not about legislating every single point of Christianity. Now, to answer your actual question, though, it would depend. I mean, there are certain things about Christian sexual morality that I think should be enforced by law. And there's some that I don't know, and there's some that I think shouldn't be. Like, for example, like adultery. Like, if you cheat on your husband or your wife, that should be illegal. Like, I would be totally in support of that being illegal. And that's Christian sexual ethics, right? But there's a lot of areas that I'm like, well, I'm not sure how we would legislate that, or if we should, or maybe we shouldn't expressly endorse it, but like we shouldn't criminalize it, or, you know, there's a lot of things, because this is different than theology, right? Than me saying something's right or wrong, right? This is a matter of government. And so, I mean, personally, it's not something that I care to like really preach on, because it's, you know, my opinion is on certain laws. It's not really relevant to my I don't know. It's not what I have a drive to talk about. You know what I mean? So I'm not very passionate about that type of stuff. And so, but I am as an extent of my theology, I guess. But my point is that the idea isn't to enforce and legislate and criminalize every single point of Christianity, but it is to get it represented more so. But yeah, with some aspects of even sexual ethics, like I said, adultery, I would be fine if it was illegal.
Yeah. Would you give me another example of maybe some other law that would be implemented that's not now, apart from abortion, but some other law that would Christian ethics bring to?
Gay marriage. Gay marriage shouldn't be recognized by the
Uh-huh.
government because it in the Christian worldview it doesn't exist. Or gay marriage isn't a real thing, right? Marriage is exclusively between a man and a woman. Two men or two women can't, like, ontologically they cannot be married, and so that would be one.
Was that a punishable crime? Because I know it got legalized but was that a punishable crime before it got legalized?
People couldn't technically get married, but people couldn't even. But before it was recognized by the government, they would just live together, right? They would just live together.
You know that was 8 years ago that got legalized or something like that?
Yeah. Feels like
that's crazy.
It's been around forever, honestly. Like, it feels like it's such a fundamental part. Like, even like conservative, like Republicans and stuff, not to tangent off, but like even conservatives and Republicans, like they don't even say that they don't even want to overturn that decision, right? Like they don't even want to change that. Like it's in 8 years we've gone from like the majority of people opposing it to both major parties in the two-party system supporting it completely and not even going to challenge it. It's very interesting how like it, and that makes it feel like that decision has been around forever. Like, it's weird to think like for most of our lives, like that, even in our young lives, like most of our young lives, that wasn't a thing. So
yeah, that's crazy to think about. But you know why? You know, they all jumped on the boat was votes. So, I mean,
yeah, and I think because when something becomes so normal and becomes so popular and like promoted, and it becomes hard to oppose it, because I think they're just scared of being called homophobic or like bigoted or something. You know, like what I mean? Like, that's like you're evil in the eyes of the world, like the whole world.
Yeah.
Basically, the whole mainstream culture, if you would oppose that decision, right? And so I think that's why they've kind of just left that decision on the back burner and not really cared about it. But to answer your point, there's several areas where I think that Christian morality, even so far as just because the majority of laws, I would say, or maybe not the majority of laws, but like a lot of the big ones we think of, like they already criminalize all the big stuff that Christianity would have, like murder and like rape and all this like crazy stuff that like obviously is very evil in Christianity. Like, it's already illegal, right? So it's not that our laws don't line up at all with Christianity. It's that I think that they need to line up more. And so I think there are several areas, but even, and this point is important, I think, that we want it to be represented more than it is right now, but even just not even in the law and what we make legal and illegal. I think that we think so much about government and what government is in terms of what it makes legal and illegal, but also a huge part of it is just what values is the government and the people in power promoting, even just through their speech, not necessarily through their laws or what's legal and illegal, but like what type of values is the president supporting? You know, what type of values is the establishment of the government, the state, what type of values is the state promoting and encouraging in society, right? Like, a lot of the anti-Christian stuff, kind of what is opposed to this idea, at least my interpretation of what Christian nationalism is, it's not what's legal and illegal. It's not what actually is in the law. It's more what the people in power are promoting. You know what I mean? It's more Joe Biden's monkeypox. Remember the monkeypox? When that was a thing that everybody was worried about over the summer. His like monkeypox outbreak coordinator was like this like fetishist who like ran a like a kink dungeon, and he like did photo shoots wearing like pentagrams and like it was crazy. Like, he was like a satanic fetishist professionally, and he was like being promoted in government, and like he was like the face of their response, and like he was being paraded out by the state, right? And there are plenty of examples of people like that, right? And So it's more so, in my opinion, the idea of Christian nationalism, what I think is important, is less so changing the laws, but I think that's one major aspect of it. But it's also what values and morals are we promoting socially through the state? Like, what are the people in power promoting and what are they discouraging, right? Because even if you don't want to criminalize homosexuality, if you want to say like, okay, we won't, if a government won't restrict, they'll stop recognizing same-sex marriage, but they won't make it illegal if people have, same-sex attractions and they act on them, right? We won't make that illegal. But what I'm more focused on is what is the government actually promoting? Like, I would be much, much happier if the government was actively discouraging that type of behavior, actively discouraging those type of lifestyles that I think are harmful,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think those type of Christian values should be represented not just in our law, but in actually what is being espoused by the state. And so as a reminder of that this is fundamentally Christian. We give people a certain amount of leeway in how they want to live their lives and the things they want to believe, right? We do give them a certain amount of leeway in how they want to live, but from the top and from the most fundamental part of our state, I think it needs to be clear that this is a Christian nation, that like these are the values that we espouse. Even if you don't think it was a Christian nation to begin with, I think that's also kind of irrelevant, although I think it's a good thing to talk about, but it is kind of irrelevant to the fundamental fact of politics, that every state, every government has to be religious. Every state, every government has to be moral in some way. It has to pick a religion, it has to pick a morality. If it can pick secular atheism, it can pick Satanism, it can pick Christianity, right? It can pick Islam, right? There are Islamic nations, and governments all have to pick a value set, right? Even if they didn't in the beginning, or even if they didn't pick one, even if they didn't pick Christianity to begin with, it's irrelevant to the fact that every government has to pick one. And I think that the one that we pick should be Christian because I'm Christian. And even if that doesn't mean legislating every part of Christianity or criminalizing every sin, it does mean from the level of the state espousing and promoting Christian values and morality and lifestyles, encouraging people to go to church, encouraging people to give up sinful lifestyles and pursue virtuous lifestyles. I think that's what's most important. And that's what I think is most important to Christian nationalism.
Yeah. Would you think, because where I sway from this is, don't you think it's our, as Christians in the here and right now, it's our mission to do that apart from the government? Now, I'm not saying there should be important voices in the government who does, say those things, but at the same time, isn't it our responsibility to, let's take it back to discipleship, and going to people and trying to not influencing them for the kingdom and saying, hey, like, there's a better way than the life you're living today. All this stuff that you're going towards is very, very unfulfilling. It's not gonna bring you anything. I'm not saying the government shouldn't encourage that, because I think people in the government should. But at the same time, if you have the whole, I mean, it would be nice, but at the same time, in the here and right now, it's our responsibility to do that ourselves, to people. And we asked ourselves as Christians, have we been doing that with people? Have we been going down to our college campus with people in the LGBTQ community and just conversing with them and just talking to them, trying to get their side of view, how they think, but also trying to influence them and winning them, to the kingdom by being like Christ to them and preaching that good news, preaching this standard of morality that brings life to people, and I would say, well, let's overshadow that with Christian national, with the government, but at the same time, as people of the faith, we have to take responsibility. I have to take better responsibility of saying, hey, like, going to talk to people, conversing with them, going to the slums, that people don't want to go to, talking to those people in the LGBTQ community, making even somewhat friends with them, saying, hey, like, and just conversing with them and being friends with them, and I'm not saying, well, Jesus was friends with sinners, and I'm not saying we should abhor and say that is right. By no means we should not say that's right. But at the same time, we should have that influence, because we're getting influenced by someone. It doesn't matter who we are, Christian, atheist, Buddhist, it doesn't matter. But we have to say, well, as Christian, isn't that our responsibility apart from the government, apart from having the government? So if we're not doing it ourselves right now, why do we think, well, the government's going to come into place and we'll put in a Christian thing where they can do it? And it's like I go back, and it's kind of convicting on my part, because like, well, I don't do that. I don't take responsibility on myself to do that, and I don't think, I also go back to, I don't think Jesus has not come into this world to make a physical kingdom per se. He didn't come to make a physical kingdom. He came to make in a sense, a spiritual one. I was just reminded of John 18:36, which says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would not have been fighting, that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from this world." If there's a heavenly kingdom, not a physical kingdom. And the only way we can influence people is by planting those seeds in those people's hearts, so God can grow them, which the government would help if we had a Christian government. But at the same time, I know you're saying, but that'd be the thing I'm worried about is, well, if it's all over the place, and they're hearing it messages, it's like, wouldn't I get sick and tired of hearing that over and over again, and you guys encouraging me? Because I mean, it's like me now. Like, I don't know about you, but I get sick and tired of all the stupid ads that come on with different politicians supporting certain issues like abortion. Bro, disconnected again. Like those stupid ads that talk about abortion's right, and it's like over and over again I hear it, and it just really makes me mad, because it's so ungenuine. Because I look at that person and I say, really, like, really, it doesn't really make a relational aspect to it. And I think as Christians, like, there needs to be some sort of relational aspect and authenticity towards people who have various different views of us, because of the way I go back to, if they, and I'm not saying you can't make anyone to believe, but I'm saying, like, if they trust you more, it's like anyone, if you trust them more, you'll be willing to listen to them, be willing to talk to them more. And that's the same way with us spreading our faith and being that influence in other people's lives, even those who we disagree with. And that's why I have a problem with making Christian politics. And I'm not saying the morals and all that are bad, and the influences, I'm not saying they shouldn't be with the culture wars, or, but I'm just saying, like, it's that bad thing. It's like that effect where it's like, I don't know. Like, it's like if we're not taking responsibility now to do that, what makes us think that even if we do have a government that does, we'll do that, So I guess I would take it back to more of a personal stance, where it's our responsibility, not our government's, because then we'll pinpoint on the government's. I know we'll be like, well, the government will solve it, the government, they'll evangelize to those people. It's like we always run to the government to fix our issues, which is one of the worst things ever. But we always do it. I mean, people do it today, both sides of the party. The government's gonna fix my issues, They're gonna fix, all these issues that we have, racism and all this, or, just
Hmm.
if you're on talking about conservative side, like, oh, what, all these false ideologies that the leftists are pushing, like, and they think, oh, they're gonna solve these. No, they're not gonna solve these issues for us. They're not gonna solve the poverty, child poverty in the nation. They're not gonna solve any of that, you know. They're not gonna solve any of that. And that's where I say we would put our trust in the government instead of putting, as Christians, putting our trust in God and His gospel. Because I always and will always say that the greatest disease that faces our nation today in the world is sin. That's the disease, and as Christians, we have the cure, which is Christ. And you go, doesn't matter where you go. You could go around the inner city right now, and you have a drug addict, and he may be a know nothing, has 3 kids, drug addict, and you preach the gospel to him, he accepts Christ. That not only changes his life, but guess what? Those 3 kids, that changes their life for the rest of, for forever. That changes his wife if he's married still. That changes everything. That's where it goes to, That's what will solve the disease that's in America today and cure it is the gospel of Christ. That's what changes lives. And as Christians, I look at it, we need to take more responsibility. I need to take more responsibility upon that. And having that influence where I walk in the room and I'm not afraid to speak up about my belief, but I do it in love. And I'm not going to put responsibility on another government to do that for me, because Jesus didn't come to bring down a physical government. He came down to bring a heavenly one.
Because His kingdom is not of this world. I understand what you're saying. Okay, well, because you're bringing up 100 million things that I can respond to, and it's I have a ton to respond to now. I don't even know where to begin, because so much of that was okay. So your basic point is that the world is so sinful that we should. I can't even wrap my head around your point, honestly. Your point is that the world is so sinful that we need to, as individuals, go around to people evangelizing, but God forbid that we as a collective society in a body politic coalesce, we get together and promote our values in politics. What you're suggesting is this weird mutual exclusivity between enforcing or representing Christian values in government and evangelizing and local efforts to convert people to Christianity. You're acting like those two things are separate. You're saying, how can we promote Christian values in government when every single one of us isn't every single day out on the streets evangelizing to people in need? It just doesn't make sense how you can act like those things are exclusive, how we can't do this because we're not doing this, but even though we are doing this, but we're just not doing it perfectly.
No.
And so you're saying that it's hypocritical of us when you're saying that we aren't evangelizing perfectly or as well as we should be. And so it would be hypocritical of us to promote our values in government. You are saying there's a difference between we as people, as personal individuals, promoting an ideology and a value set, and the government promoting that value set. You're saying we on the ground, personally, individually, need to promote these values. We can't look to the government to do that. But we live in America where we have a self-governing republic where the government is supposed to be the people. It's the voice of the people. Our government is run by our representatives. And so they need to represent us and our values. If we all share common values, the representatives, our representative government, is supposed to represent us and our values. And so you're drawing this distinction where there actually is no difference. You're saying that how can the government do something when that's our responsibility as the people. Well, the government's supposed to be by the people for the people. So if we have a certain value set that we want to promote, not only should we be doing that on the street, not only should we be doing that in our personal lives by embodying the values and talking to people on a personal level about it, but we should also use our representatives to pass laws and promote our morals and our vision for a country in the government. That's the whole point of a self-governing republic democratic system that we have. It's not this separate thing like you're saying where they're completely separate, and to do one without perfectly doing the other is hypocrisy. And how can we have the government do something and rely on them to do something instead of doing it ourselves, as if it's one or the other, when rather we can just promote our values and our beliefs in government through our representatives, because that's how a democratic republic is supposed to work. Or, I mean, as well, we can be on the street on a personal level promoting the values and promoting the beliefs. So why are you saying that there's this exclusivity where we can only do one or the other, and how dare we use the government when we aren't perfectly evangelizing?
Well, I'm just saying, okay, so you have a government who puts down these laws, and these laws won't change people's hearts. That's what I'm saying. What did the Catholic Church get into the problem with? Why do you have a bunch of Catholics, or well, let's go or the higher up who are priests? I'm not saying it's a problem, but you have a bunch of laws, for example, intact, that are there, that are to hinder people. But guess what? Those laws never change the heart of those men. So why is there so much pedophilia in a sense of Christian churches today or Catholic churches? Why is there so much sin? I am saying you're missing the point, all because I'm looking at it at the heart aspect of it. You can make as many laws as you want, but if you don't change the heart of that person, it's not going to make them to stop committing those things. You can force it. I'm looking at the more of a person's aspect and their soul, where I don't want to force something on them that they will still have, and that goes for Christians too in the church, where we can make a bunch of laws up and say, well, you got to do this, that, and that, and but their hearts never change. They never fully give their heart to God. And if you make a bunch of laws up saying you have to follow this, that, and that, you'll never change those people's hearts. You never give them their hearts will just become hardened towards God. And that's why I'm on the wayside of it, because of the way that is what will happen. And what would be the whole point if you put in a bunch of laws and their hearts just are never changed? If we're going from a Christian perspective, because we want their hearts changed, we want them to know Christ. But if their hearts never change and we just try to force it down their throat, saying you're gonna have to do all these things that you are not morally capable of, so we would lessen their freedom of choice, which the founding fathers, quote unquote, came to give. So I look at it, if Christian nationalism stayed the way it is, and in the laws there'll be only two genders, correct? There'll be male, the sex is male and female, gender is male and female. There'll be none of that LGBTQ or any of that. I would suppose, correct? If we're talking about ethically.
What, you're talking about that stuff would be discouraged or made illegal?
Would it be made illegal?
Well, I already explained that. The specific
illegal.
laws don't really matter. It's like there's nuance to it, and the things are gonna be different. But the principle is that promoting Christian values in government.
But if you force those things onto those people, what makes you think they'll come to believe?
I never said anything about making them come to believe. That's not what I'm saying. That my point is in doing that. That's
why I'm saying that the foundation of Christian nationalism is you're just saying, well, there'll be some principles and ethics, but I mean, if I'm looking at a Christian nation, that means everything has to be upheld.
Yeah, all Christian ethics should be promoted by the state. The state should promote all aspects of Christian morality. It's not saying that
you would not make them the law. You would not make them in the law. You would engrave them in the law, correct?
Every single minute part? No. I don't think that every single minute part of Christian ethics needs to be legislated or criminalized. But I'm saying that Christian ethics and morality and values should be promoted by the government. And so I don't understand why you're saying, well, that doesn't change their hearts. In regard to that, that doesn't actually matter all that much. That in terms of our laws, because it's better for people to act virtuously when their heart's not in it than for them to sin with their heart fully on fire for that sin. It is much better to force people to be virtuous against their will than it is to let sin abound. Your solution to a world that is plagued by sin, as you said, the biggest sickness in the world, is to allow sin to flourish and to legalize it and to let it be fine because, well, if we say that this sin is illegal, well, then it won't actually change anything and their hearts won't be in it and they won't be converted to Christianity. And that's your argument when that actually doesn't matter. It's just about reducing sin and promoting a society that values Christian ideals. And if you think that if a country from the state level is promoting through their words and through legislation Christian values, do you really think that there's going to be no change a generation or two from now? I mean, look at how our country used to be. Rewind 100 years ago. I mean, a lot's gotten better and a lot's gotten worse. But Christian values were much more common and much more widespread. Why? Because it was represented in law. It was represented by the representatives. It was espoused by the state. And that affected people. Even though there were people that didn't agree with it, their hearts weren't in it. They didn't want to follow those laws, but they did because it was the law. That still created a virtuous society. It still created a culture that valued that stuff. And that's what's important. It's not about every single person being converted. It's about setting the standard from the state level of what our society is going to look like and value.
So would you say it's virtuous to beat your wife, which I mean happened a lot?
No, which that would be
illegal.
illegal.
It's virtuous, but
what are you saying?
But you in the nation, okay, in the 50s, 40s, abuse.
Who cares? What's the relevance of that?
Who cares? But no, you're saying, well, there's all these laws put into place. That doesn't mean sin won't abound.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that unless a law can reduce all sin, then it shouldn't be enacted at all. You're saying that unless the law is perfect, unless the law takes away all sin, which it never will, you're saying it shouldn't be enacted. You're saying no laws should be enacted because sin will happen anyway.
No, I'm saying the only way you make people not sin is not by what you put in the law, but it's by preaching the gospel of Christ and planting those seeds into those hearts and letting that grow. Because you may put laws on them. Yeah, it's illegal to abuse your wife. Does that not mean people still do it? You know? Did people still do it? Were they over drinking? You know, were they getting drunk? Yes. Were people still having sex outside of marriage? Yes. You can't change people's behaviors if you put it in the law. The only way you change people's behaviors is by the heart. That's the only way.
All right, well, I guess that's just where we're going to fundamentally disagree because you think the law doesn't work. So you think that rape should be legal, murder should be legal, assault should be legal, everything should be legal because you just said is that the law never changes people's behaviors. You just said the law never changes people's behaviors. That just came out of your mouth. You just said that people's behaviors do not change based on the law, so the law has no purpose. I think, on the other hand, that if you tell someone, we're going to kill you if you do this, we're going to put you in jail, or you're going to get the death penalty if you do these things, then they are much less likely to do that. Paul writes in the New Testament that we have to have respect for the authority of the law because the state does not wield the sword in vain, because there is the threat of the government enacting virtue on you, enacting morality on you. The threat of death is there. The threat of punishment by the government is there because that changes people's behavior. You might think that the government and that laws do nothing to affect people's behavior, but that's not true. People are discouraged from doing certain things when they're illegal. And when they're legal, they're encouraged to do them. That's how the law works. It's not perfect. You're saying that sin still happens. You're saying people still beat their wives, people still murder, people still overdrink. Yeah, because the law cannot be perfect.
About?
I'm not saying you're wrong. You're right. the law doesn't reduce all sin. I'm not saying the law takes away all sin, but it does reduce it to less. It discourages it. So what you are saying is that unless the government can perfectly cleanse all people from sin, you're saying unless the government can make it so that there is never sin in a nation ever again, you're saying unless the problem of sin can be absolutely cured by the state, then the state should never pass a single law to discourage sin. You're saying unless it can be perfect, we should never try at all. And I think that is completely wrong.
No,
we don't even
you
have
are
time
taking
anymore.
no, you
we
are
don't even
taking
have time anymore.
no, you are taking my words out of, because again,
Derek, I can play the clip right now of you saying that the law never changes behavior.
you could put because the law never.
Okay, and that's where we're disagreeing.
Still like,
that's why we're disagreeing.
Why? But I'm not saying. But you're saying I'm saying the law, having the law implemented in place is a bad thing. But I'm saying at the same time, if you're withholding every Christian ethic, abuse, all that, sex outside of marriage, illegal, correct? Mm-hmm. You can't change those people's hearts by those laws.
I don't care.
It's like, why did we?
It matters that they're doing it less. I don't care.
But
I don't care.
Okay, so
that's
so
a
they're
different
doing it
problem.
Less.
That's a different problem.
So they're doing it less.
Yeah,
so
that's better.
So if they're doing it less. What's okay?
That's better. That's a better society.
They're doing it less.
There's less sin.
But
that's a better country. That's a better culture when people are sinning less, even if their heart's not in it. Now, that's a whole other problem of how we can get their hearts to be in it. How can we evangelize to them? How can we get them to really care about their morality? But in terms of the law and in terms of the state, I don't care if their hearts are in it as much as I care about them not doing it. If a society is not participating in certain sinful activities, even if people in the society want to, but they're not doing it because they're under threat of punishment, that is a good thing. That's better. Like I said before, it is better to act virtuously when your heart is not in it than it is to passionately sin and have the law completely allow you to do that. It is better. They're not Christian either way. So if someone's not going to be a Christian either way, I would prefer them to not be a Christian yet act like one than for them to not be a Christian and not act like a Christian. The disposition of their heart does not matter. There's this weird, newer, kind of post-liberalism idea that unless your heart's in it, there is no merit to virtue. Virtue is good for virtue's sake. Simply doing virtuous acts when you don't want to, when your heart's not in it, when you completely disagree with the moral standard, is a good thing, whether or not your heart is in it or not. Now, that might affect your faith life, that might affect your spiritual life, that might affect your relationship with Christ. Doesn't matter. Doing virtuous things is good whether or not your heart is in it. And having a country that allows people and promotes people doing virtuous things and acting in a morally upright way, whether or not their hearts are in it, does create a better society. And I personally am on the mission to create a better society. As a person who engages in the political system, I want it to encourage a better society because it has to promote some sort of ethics. Either we're promoting bad ethics or promoting good ethics, a bad ethical system or a good ethical system. And whether or not people agree, I think that Christianity is a good ethical system, and I want to see it promoted in law, whether or not people are passionate about it or not. I don't care. Now, there's evangelistic efforts that can be made to make their hearts in it. Just like you said, people on the streets, people doing a personal mission of converting people to Christianity. But I don't care as much about that when it comes to making laws. There are people that still want to murder people. There is laws against murder. People still get murdered. But I don't think we should repeal laws against murder simply because, well, it's still going to happen anyway, so you just have to evangelize to all the people who have murder in their hearts instead of criminalizing it. I think that's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. The principle you're espousing would be the removal of all laws. You said the law does not change people's behaviors, and how can we as Christians justify...
Well, can I explain it?
No, you said as Christians, how can we justify promoting certain laws against sin when they're just going to do it anyway, and they're just going to want to do it anyway? I think that we should make certain things illegal, whether or not it's going to happen anyway. Just like with abortion. Abortions are still going to happen. I still think it should be illegal. Women are still going to want to get abortions. They're still going to have murder in their hearts against their children. I don't care. It should still be illegal because I don't think it should happen. I think they should be forced to just, suck it up. You can't murder your kid. Suck it up. You can't cheat on your wife. Suck it up. You can't sin. Your heart might not be in it. I get that. Sometimes I want to sin too. But you just got to suck it up and not sin anyway. And if you do, the cops are going to come, and we're going to use the threat of the law against you. I'm sorry your heart's not in it. We can have a conversation about the state of your heart and your relationship with Christ, and I want your heart to be in it. I want your heart to be really aligned with virtue and Christian morality, and so we can have that conversation. But legally speaking, you're just not going to kill your kid. You're just not going to cheat on your wife. We're just not going to let you, because this is a country run by us.
You're missing the point.
I'm not.
You're missing the point, because I did not say the law is not good, but I'm saying at the same time you are forcing ethical things that are not okay already in the stealing is wrong, correct? Stealing is already wrong. Thing I'm forcing on everyone else. But you are going. If you tell someone not to do something,
yep,
they're going to be more likely to do it.
I don't think that's true. If you say that you're going to be put to death if you do that, or you're going to go to jail for a really long time if you do that, then I think they're going to be less likely to do it.
So if someone sleeps with someone outside the confines of marriage, we'll put them to death?
I didn't say death for everything. Jail. Yeah, jail. If you cheat on your wife, you're going to jail. If you get caught cheating on your wife, you're going to jail for a long time. People would cheat on their wives less. I guarantee it. I guarantee if people knew that if I cheat on my wife right now, I am going to go to jail, I guarantee you they would do it less. That's how incentives work. That's how politics works. That's how government works. That's how the law works. You disincentivize certain behaviors by criminalizing it, and you encourage certain behaviors by legalizing it. Making things easier makes things more likely to happen. Making things harder and punishing certain things makes them less likely to happen. If you can really look at me in the eye and tell me that laws against murder actually increase the chance of murder, if you can tell me that telling someone, if you do this, we're going to send you to jail or put you to death, if that makes it more likely for them to do it, then I just don't think you understand how human beings work. Because someone tells me, you know what, that thing you really want to do, we're going to kill you if you do it. I'm gonna say, yeah, all right. I'm gonna say I could live without doing that thing. I won't do it. All right, I'll stay faithful to my wife. I won't murder, even if I want to.
All right. Well,
I think the law actually works.
When we get a Christian nation, and you put every Christian ethic in there,
it would be a better place.
Everyone abide to, and you will have 75% of the country in jail because of the way their hearts are not changed.
You're straw manning. You're straw manning again. You're saying that a Christian nation means every single sin is punishable by life in prison or death or something. You're saying that Christian nation means that every single sin means you're going to jail. No one's saying that. I debunked that 5 minutes into the episode. It's just not true. I already said that every single minute point of Christian ethics is not going to be Christian.
No. Which one would go in the law? Which one would not? Which one
Derek,
would go?
Welcome to
Which
politics.
Derek,
welcome to politics. We sit and debate these things. We don't say the law is purposeless, because once you make one thing illegal, you just got to make everything illegal. Who's to say where it ends? It's a slippery slope. If you make murder illegal, you might as well make walking your dog illegal. Welcome to politics, Derek. We say that certain things should be legal and certain things should be illegal. We all have different value sets that want to be put in government, and we debate which ones go up there. And then someone says, hey, I think this should be illegal. And I say, well, geez, we're both Christians, but you think that should be illegal. I think we should be a little more lenient on that. And then we debate about it, and we see what the majority of people want. We see what the consensus is in the society. Welcome to democratic politics. Welcome to Republican government. That's how it works. We all have different ideas about what should be legal and illegal, and we debate it, and we vote on it, and we elect people who do that for us as well sometimes. Welcome to government. You don't just throw your hands up in the air. That's like I said, it's just such a liberal idea, not even in the sense of being a Democrat, but I mean like a post-Enlightenment liberalism idea that like, oh, well, geez, you think that should be illegal, and I think it should be legal. You think this, I think this. Who's really to say what's the truth? It's this radical skepticism, radical subjectivism on morality that just says law is essentially pointless, because if you make that illegal, that's a slippery slope, and then that could become illegal, and that could become illegal, and who's to say where it stops? Who's to say where the legal and illegal stuff ends? No, you are missing the point,
ends? Because I said, whoa. See, you are missing, no, because I said on the basis of Christian ethics, ethics, which is the standard of truth. I didn't say about what they believe. I said on the basis of Christian ethics. I didn't say on the basis of some other ethics, Islamic ethics. I said on the basis of Christian ethics. What is right and wrong by the standard of the Bible? Those ethics in the Bible, the Christian ethics, every Christian ethic.
What about it?
You're going to put that in the government. You're saying, I'm saying, well, the subjective, go into that, say, well, they believe, bestiality is okay, then that's fine. No, I said on the standard of Christian
That's the
ethics
logical
and
extent of
having
what
the
you're
standard
saying.
of God's word to govern the
Huh?
people. You have you have the Bible to govern the people. In Christian nationalism, you have all the ethics from the Bible in the government. Okay, and you're telling me we're just gonna go by and say which one is which and vote and stuff.
Yeah, that's
If
what
this is the
politics is.
standard of
That's how
truth,
this works.
if this is the standard of truth, correct? Why wouldn't it all go in?
Well, you know that there's a bunch of different interpretations of the Bible, and so what I'm saying is that we debate and we have different. I told you already that the Christian nationalist belief. I'll say it for the fourth or fifth time now because apparently you're not getting it. The Christian nationalist belief is not at all that every single tenet of Christianity should be legislated, that every single minute sin. If you lie, 10 years in jail. If you cheat on this test in class, 10 years in jail. 15-year-old kid. That's not what anyone is saying. And for the fifth time now, you have strawmanned it because the logical extent of what you are saying is that laws don't matter. You said laws do not affect behavior at all. That's what you said. You said that why put in place a law when that thing is just going to happen anyway? Why put in place a law when sin is still going to exist anyway? Well, geez, I mean, if we can only put in place laws when in a world where sin doesn't exist, then I guess we can never put in laws. That is the logical extent of the syllogism that you are promoting. And then you're walking back and saying, no, I'm not saying that no laws should exist. I'm just saying laws don't work and they're pointless. Like, what? You're not being logically consistent at all.
I said law was not. I did not say law was a bad thing to have. I'm just saying
it's a
you're going
pointless thing
to
to
force
have.
a bunch of laws on people.
Yes.
No, there are some, like I said, laws are not a bad thing, but I'm saying you are, on the basis of right now, you bring in Christian nationalism, you will have a bunch of people. I'm more worried about life change instead of, well, they can live by the laws and and I'm not saying laws because that's how you keep government, is how you keep order. God has instilled government to keep order in the nation, and every nation. But if you don't, I'm more important. I put more emphasis on the changing of the heart because of the way that will not make people want to do those things. That's the perspective I'm coming from. They're not wanting to do those things because they don't desire to. They desire more of God.
Yeah, okay. So for the second, third, fourth time now, I'll debunk the same argument that you've put out, which is this mutually exclusive concept, this mutual exclusivity between evangelism and converting people to Christianity and government enforcing certain ethics. You're saying that those things are completely separate. You're saying, well, sure, Christian ethics in law, that's one thing, but I'm more focused on converting people to Christianity and changing their hearts, as if people who promote Christian nationalism and people like me don't want to change hearts and don't want to convert people to Christianity and don't care about the state of people's hearts. That's not the case. You're acting like these are exclusive things where they can't both happen. We can evangelize in the streets and change people's minds and also have a government that doesn't promote the killing of 1 million babies a year or mutilating children because they are confused in their heads or murdering people or cheating on their wives and their husbands. And I think we can do both. We can say that these things should be illegal. They're very, very bad. But then on a personal level, I want to change your heart. I'm not here to report you. I'm not here to beat you over the head and drag you off to jail myself. I'm here to change your heart on a personal level. But in terms of government, when I get a choice to vote for someone who's going to promote adultery or criminalize adultery, I'm a Christian, so I'm going to vote for the person that's going to criminalize and discourage adultery, for example. When that comes to politics, I'm going to vote for the people that want to encourage Christian morality. And that's Christian nationalism, is putting Christian morality at the heart of what we do, even in politics, even in government, wanting the state to encourage Christian values. That's Christian nationalism. That doesn't affect what we do on a personal level with people we meet on the street. Not at all. It's not to say that we whack them and then we call the police and we I got him. He's right here. He lied to me right now. Give him 15 years in jail and maybe the electric chair. No. The evangelism still has a place in a world where Christian values are promoted. And you're acting like there is no place for evangelism in the world I'm describing.
but I'm saying, when do we do that now? When have you done that?
What do you mean? People evangelize all the time. I talk to people who aren't Christian all the time. I talk to people who are Christian. We do this podcast because we freaking want to talk to people about theology and about Christian living.
I'm saying I'm saying is, why you look at the early church, that government wasn't Christian, correct?
They were being They were being put in jail and beheaded for being Christian. Yeah, you're right. The government wasn't Christian. I bet they wish they weren't, though.
But the same thing, the gospel spread, correct?
Yeah.
In China right now, the gospel is spreading throughout with persecution badly, but it's spreading.
So what? What's your point?
Okay, and I'm looking at but my point is, if you make it, like I say, I'm not saying we shouldn't uphold Christian values, but at the same time, the landscape, the way the government is now, the landscape of how the people's hearts are, you're going to start forcing Christian values on someone who doesn't agree with it. And from my experience, if you try to force something on someone they do not agree with, it's not going to go well. They're going to harden their heart. Like I said, they're going to harden their hearts.
We could probably just end it here, because that's just the heart of the disagreement. That is the heart of the disagreement that I think we've gotten to, is that you think that you think in terms of law, our goal should be to change hearts from a legal perspective. And I don't. I don't think that should be our goal in terms of legal perspective. I don't think the law, that's what you just said. You just said that the law does nothing.
But I'm saying, if you do it from a legal perspective where you force it, that won't change anyone's heart.
Yeah, exactly.
The law
and you're
won't
acting
change
like that's a bad
heart.
thing.
That's
and I'm
thing,
saying it's something that doesn't matter. So that's our difference. You're saying it's a bad thing that the law can't change hearts. And I'm saying I don't care that the law can't change hearts. The law is there to change behavior. That's what I care about. So when I'm voting for certain laws, I'm looking for something that's going to change behavior in a positive direction. When I focus on evangelism and I focus on personal relationships, then I'm focusing on changing hearts. Both can happen at the same time. You're saying we need to throw out the legal aspect of changing behavior in favor of the personal aspect of changing the heart. And I'm saying both.
Okay, well, that's where we disagree. But you can't change behavior without changing the heart. That's fundamental. You cannot change behavior without changing. Yes.
That's a fundamental disagreement about the nature of human beings. That's because that is a fundamental difference that is really popular in society right now. And I think this debate actually wraps it up perfectly, because I think this debate is really emblematic. I guess it's really like it really synthesizes what the debate is in our culture right now between people who are more libertarian and have a more liberal mindset. It's the skepticism that law changes behavior, that punishment changes behavior, and there is a more old school idea that law does change behavior, and that saying to someone that you're going to go to jail if you do this, that actually will change behavior. Derek is saying that the law actually doesn't fundamentally change behavior, because unless the heart changes, the behavior doesn't change. And I'm saying the other way around, that behavior can change without the heart changing, and that actually behavior changing can actually change the heart. It's like a fake it till you make it type thing. And this is kind of going beyond the legal thing, because I'm not telling people that they need a fake morality till they make it, although in a certain sense, but it's just the idea that our actions can change our hearts. Doing certain things even when you don't want to do them can eventually change it to where your heart changes and you have a disposition where you want to do those things again. But that's a little more of a tangent on the philosophy of kind of behavior. I think it's okay that we disagree on our legal frameworks for American politics. I don't think it's such a big deal. So, yeah, thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. It was a good one. Tell us what you guys think. Do you guys think that fundamentally the difference comes down to what affects human behavior? Do you guys think that laws and punishments and this impersonal state can truly change people's behavior? Or do you think that it has to be an evangelistic outreach that changes hearts in order to change behavior? Tell us what you think about all that, because it's basically the central debate that's happening between the left and the right in American politics today. Let us know, DM us, and we'll see y'all next week.